Jack Daniel's releasing batch 2 of their 12-year-old Tennessee whiskey. Last year, the company released batch 1 of their 12-year-old Tennessee whiskey and batch 1 and 2 of their 10-year-old Tennessee whiskey. This one comes in at 107 proof. Mash bill on this one is 80% corn, 12% malted barley, and 8% rye. It was aged in new, toasted, and charred American oak before moving to the lower parts of the rick house for extended maturation. I was a pretty big fan of this one last year. I wasn't able to get a bottle of it. Excited to see how this batch 2 turns out, guys. Without further ado, let's go. All right, guys, so as I stated, this one does come in at 107 proof. Mash bill on this one is 80% corn, 12% malted barley, 8% rye. Let's get into those. It reminds me, so further into the glass, it reminds me of a very kind of creamy, almost like a toffee, like a caramelized toffee. Then further away from the glass, it kind of exposes a little bit more of some of that like deep and dark kind of fruitiness to it. Not such a dark fruit, but there is like some deep, rich aromas of fruit. It's more of like a red fruit a little bit. Almost reminds me of a different distillery, but that red fruit is really nice. It's like a caramelized fruit, and then further into the glass, that fruit becomes a sweetness instead. It's almost like a toffee kind of sweetness. And then, you know, with that like caramelized toffee, very, very sweet on the nose. And, you know, surprisingly, too, that sweetness almost reminds me, you know, I think with that being toasted and charred in there, too, I do get some of that like marshmallow sweetness in there as well. But I also get some sweet oak there further in the glass. Further away, I don't necessarily get that oakiness to it. You know, I'm still getting a lot of that red fruit, almost like a berry, like a jam, but like caramelized. And then again, further into the glass, it's more like that toffee that's kind of caramelized, some sweet oak in there too. Let's get it, palate, guys. Cheers. So this batch actually kind of brings forth more of a so that like fruity kind of jam that I was getting on the nose. Big kind of spicy kind of fruit impact there on the front and middle of the palate. Some like apricot, some apple, some strawberry. A lot of fruitiness going on. But then as it transitions into the back of the palate, there is a sweetness like that, like toffee, butterscotch sweetness. And then into the back of the palate, I do start to pick up like a little bit of like leather, maybe tobacco, that kind of ends into the back. Slightly drying on that first sip, but again, it's my first sip of the day. Does come off slightly drying there, but that fruity burst there on the front and middle of the palate, still kind of like hanging on there, and it's slowly kind of transitioning back, like further down the tongue. It's a nice first sip. The spiciness from it kind of surprised me there, and it almost came off a little hotter than 107. Let's get the second sip. So second sip, spiciness, you know, kind of died down there across the center of the palate. Still a lot of it's like a mixed fruit, almost like jammy. It gives you some of that, some of those oils there on the front of the palate. That kind of like blends some of these fruits together. Because again, like it's like an apricot, maybe some apple, some strawberry in there. You know, a little bit of that red fruit. But the way it kind of impacts the palate is very interesting, because it really kind of just like sets in. I mean, I'm still tasting that fruitiness there on the front middle of the palate, and then as it gets to the back of the palate, that, you know, that fruitiness kind of transitions again into like a toffee kind of butterscotch sweetness, and then on the back of the palate, it kind of goes dark. It starts to turn into like these leather. I think it's more of a leather than tobacco note on this one. It's almost like a dried leather. And then into the finish, like real little bit of some black pepper there that's kind of like flowing through. Pretty good. Let's get in the last sip, guys. Cheers. So now that I'm on my third and final sip, that fruitiness, it's still there. It's not as dominating though of a flavor. It kind of opened up a little bit. Now I'm starting to pick up some like oak, some of that sweet oak there on the front of the palate, and that oakiness and that fruitiness combined It's kind of toned down, that jamminess. It's still there, kind of attaching to the front and middle of the palate. Like it really kind of clings on. Middle of the palate now, like some of that oakiness has kind of transitioned into like some of that, like the butterscotch, that toffee note, very, very kind of sweet there. And then as it hits into the back of the palate again, it kind of turns into that dark side, you know what I mean? So you're starting to get some of that like dried leather, black pepper as it kind of slowly pulls down. It's got a medium finish to it. I would have to do a side-by-side comparison of batch 1 and batch 2 to see the difference. I just don't remember batch 1 being as fruit forward on the front of the palate. I thought, if I remember correctly, I thought it was almost reversed, where it was like I was getting some of that darkness there up at the front and then the fruitiness into the back. So maybe it just kind of like swapped the placement on the palate. But either way, Jack Daniel's putting out some delicious stuff, guys. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to give a big shout out to the team over Jack Daniel's for supplying with this sample here to review on the channel. Guys, I'd have to do a side-by-side comparison of the batch 1 against the batch 2 to see kind of like the differences in the impact on the palate and the flavor and where it kind of positions itself. But overall, I did enjoy this one. I feel like there was a little bit more oakiness on this one. Like after that, on that third and final sip, that oak started to make its impact there on the palate, and that fruitiness kind of started to die down a little bit. First 2 sips came off fruity. Nice kind of sweetness again that sits there across the center of the palate. It offers some really nice oils though, because those flavors really kind of attach to the tongue and they don't let go. It really kind of hangs on there. It's just some of the flavors that came on that last sip kind of muted some of those, but they still kind of attached on. And then into the back of the palate, it kind of turns dark and gives you some of that leather, that dry leather, and then some black pepper that kind of pulls down. But either way, I mean, for the price point, if you guys can find this at retail, I think it'd be a really good buy. The batch 1 was good as well. But again, side-by-side comparison might be coming, guys. But big shout out again, and a big thank you to Jack Daniel's for supplying with the sample here to review on the channel. Guys, if you're looking for more reviews like this, hit that subscribe button and bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. Till next time, guys, stay dusty.